Hello, 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 and thank you for clicking this video. I'm Anthony White, and you're watching The Experience. On Tuesday, September 23rd, Kentucky State Attorney General Daniel Cameron announced that no one would be charged in the death of Breonna Taylor. Brett Hankinson, one of the cops involved, was in fact charged and indicted for reckless endangerment, which meant that he shot into the neighboring apartment. Daniel Cameron made a statement, and I quote, "My job as a special prosecutor in this case was to put emotions aside and investigate the facts to determine if criminal violations of state law resulted in the loss of Miss Taylor's life." Also on September 23rd, I had a pre-scheduled meeting with activists, community leaders, city organizer, mother, and veteran Juanita Charles. Some might remember Juanita Charles for her compelling run for office last year in 2019. Even after she lost by a small margin, Miss Charles continued to do the work within her community of Clarksville, Tennessee, working closely with the mayor's office in regards to Black and brown people who are disproportionately discriminated against within her city. It was important to sit down with Ms. Charles to discuss the work that she's doing within her community and to get the reaction from the news regarding Breonna Taylor that her and I had just gotten hours prior. Take a look. So, Ms. Charles, thank you, Juanita Charles. Today, we had already planned this interview, but today is probably one that will go down in history for our community. On the night of March 13th, Breonna Taylor, an aspiring nurse, was shot to death in her home in Louisville, Kentucky. According to a lawsuit filed by Ms. Taylor's family, she was shot 8 times by law enforcement. On September 23rd, Kentucky State Attorney General Daniel Cameron announced that Brett Hankinson was the only officer involved in Ms. Taylor's death that will be charged, and the charge was reckless endangerment. Breonna Taylor is among many Black people who have been killed by the hands of police, including Botham Jean, who was also shot in his home of Dallas, Texas. For those of you who don't know, today is September 23rd. This show will air in October, but today is September 23rd. And today, no one was charged in the murder of Breonna Taylor. Brett Hankinson was charged with reckless endangerment for endangering her neighbor, but was not charged for her actual murder. And 2 out of 3 will walk free. What was your just human reaction when you got this news today?
Initially, I was numb. It's one of those things where, you have a little sliver of hope. You have what you want to happen, and what we're asking for is not a lot, right? It's the bare minimum.
Right.
So I was numb, and I just cried. I just cried like a baby, and so then I asked myself all of these questions, and then you kind of go through. So we kind of went through the motions, and my husband was there with me. We were just kind of watching it together, and then my daughter. So we have a 2-year-old, and she just kept crying. Usually she'll just go right down for a nap, and she just kept crying. I was like, well, what is this about? And then I'm looking at her, and I'm just like, that's my Breonna Taylor.
Wow.
And my husband and I, we just cried, and because that's the human reaction. And then after a second of kind of, okay. We live in America, so we know this was not a stretch. We always knew it was possible. So now what do we do? And then we just went right into work.
Juanita Charles, city planner, organizer, and activist, has continued to serve her community even after an upset loss of the state Senate. She continues to work for her city by planning rallies, workshops, and other events that bring awareness to the struggles and racial injustice within her state. Ms. Charles is also a veteran, mother, and wife.
What inspires a little Black girl to grow up to be a community leader, a city organizer, a candidate for office, and one day an actual senator? And God knows where you'll go from there. Yeah. What inspired this little Black girl to be who you are now?
There's a lot of different things, but I think there was a question, right? So I started to see. So for the longest, I was always like me, if that makes sense. So I'm the oldest of 6 brothers, 4 sisters. Like there's a lot of us, right? We got different moms and dads, but I'm the oldest, and I'm the sister, right? So I am the one that makes things okay. I'm the one that fixes. So I've always kind of been a fixer. And in the military, well, that's a whole nother thing, right? So in the military, for any of you who have been in the military as a Black woman, there's not really a lot of options. Right. You got to be great or just get out. Right. And that's just what it is. So you don't really have an option to be mediocre. So that's how it was. And then so coming here and kind of seeing the things that were going on and the things that I wanted to fix and the things that were disparities is like, okay, how do you bridge these gaps? And I think, so that was there, right? I wanted to just do that. I wanted to just help people. And then when I had my kids, so I have 3 daughters. So I'm like, ooh, I am raising 3 black women, you know, and again, I have these 6 brothers and I'm married to a black man. And so the more I look at things, so my focus is heavily, black people, right? Because those are where the largest disparities are, whether it's in business or the wealth gap or just social justice, like that's just where it is. So that's where I put the majority of my focus. And so my inspiration was literally just a question. It was like, you know what? We need somebody to do this. We need somebody to do that. And then my question was like, well, why can't it be me? You know, because so often we are looking for superheroes. And my husband brought me this frame years ago, and it says she was looking for a hero, she couldn't find it, so she decided to become it. And that's just what it was. Like, that is my embodiment. He said, this is you, this has always been, and that's really what it was. So the question is, you know, well, why not you? And then when it came to my race, same thing. So if not you, then who? If not now, then when? What are you waiting for? Because nobody's coming to save you. So that's what the inspiration was. Because if I don't do it, you know, waiting on the next person, or there's no reason why I can't do it. And that's really it.
Well, why is that important? The reason why I ask that is because we have politicians. We have politicians who say they are working for our community, working for our city, working for our state. And if they got it covered, you know, why is it important that people like us are in those offices? What does that mean to our community?
So I guess what we're looking at right now is like diversity, right? Diversity, inclusion, equity. And so it's important for people of color to hold those positions, because a lot of times white people, or even other people of color, they just don't know what it's like to walk in our shoes. Nobody knows your problems better than you do, right? Or your issues in your community. A lot of times, so let me just start from the beginning. So I grew up really, really poor. And then we lived in the projects, and then we slowly moved our way up. And then so my mom ended up buying a house when I was like 17 or 18, right? So this is the American dream, right? So and so I tell people all the time, I came from the dirt. I came from the mud. Like, I didn't have a bed that wasn't a mattress laying on the floor, so I was like 12. You know what I'm saying? So I can take those experiences and my experiences being a soldier, you know, and a sergeant, you know, NCO in the military, and then being a civilian when I left the military, and then being a military wife, and then my husband being injured and getting put out before we were ready, and us being not knowing we're going to be able to pay our mortgage, and all of those. Like, I can take all of those experiences and put them into solutions, right? Because I have lived that. So people will give you this super negative stereotypical trope about the welfare queen and the this and the that, but guess what? That's not a real thing. And so I guess just taking it back, so it's important for us because we have those lived experiences, and other people don't always don't see life from your point of view or from your experience. And I will say this: it is important to have people of color in those spaces, but it's important to have people of color who identify as people of color. Because I'm so tired of having black politicians who don't identify with black issues. Because why? Not saying why are you there? Because you can still lead, but if you're not there to ensure that everybody is cared
and
for,
affecting your own community.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Because I truly believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, and I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but let me tell you how I think it works. If we're at the bottom of the total pole, if we're doing better, it raises everybody. If we have disposable income, we're buying houses, we're increasing the tax base, we have. First of all, then people are less of a burden, as they like to say, and it's not a burden, but less of a burden on the healthcare system, and on, you know what I'm saying? So what I'm saying? So I think when we look at things from a holistic view, we can see why it's important for everybody to be in all spaces. But and that's how we've created the disparities that we have now. Anyway, is when they said all men were created equal, they did not consider people of color, and they did not consider women, and that's why we have the issue that we have now, the issues that we have now. So.
That is deep, and we're going to get into that a little bit further. You know, when we hear about the Black Lives Matter movement, I was a pro All Lives Matter. When the Black Lives Matter came out, I was like, see, here we go again. We're segregating ourselves and we're calling Black Lives Matter. It didn't hit me until 2020. What does Black Lives Matter mean to you?
Exactly what it is. My life matters, and your life matters. And our lives matter just as much as everybody else's lives. I have a huge issue with people who denounce Black Lives Matter and don't take the time to know what it means. Or people will say, well, that organization, we're not talking about organizations, we're talking about lives. We're talking about me and you, people who go to work, people who pay taxes, because apparently that's paramount in most people's, in some people's ideals. People who worship the same as you, people who, they drive cars, they care for their families, they take care of their children. They do the same things you do. They put on their pants, one leg at a time, just like you. Their skin just is a little bit darker. It's a little bit more melanated. It agrees a little bit more with the sun.
Right.
And for whatever reason, that pigmentation has put a target on us. And so I think when we look at it for what it is, we're not saying nobody else matters or you matter less. We're saying that we are in distress because we are under constant attack. And so let me give you one example of something that I dealt with just recently. So I'm a real estate agent and a real estate investor, right? So you would think, okay, well, that's just what you do. I have been a real estate agent for over 10 years, and the disparities that I see that other people can't see because they don't live in this skin is borderline remarkable, right? But when I bring it up to somebody else, say, well, I literally had a colleague like 3 months ago, well, Black people would just, wait a minute now.
Wow.
So let me say, so I'm a Black person. I do all the things that you say. My husband, he does all the things that you say, but it does not stop him from being pulled over for a taillight being out and being held at gunpoint on I-24.
And that was, I wanted to talk about that too. You say you have three daughters. I have 2 daughters. I've always been one of those people who tell Black people or Black children, I have nephews and nieces, comply. If the cop is telling you to do something, you just do it and you take your fight to the courthouse, at least you have your life. I've had arguments about that where Black people say that's not right. Again, it doesn't hit me because what I'm compelling Black people to do is to become enslaved to a white man in a uniform. I was trying to explain this to my 11-year-old daughter and I said, just comply. She said, well, Breonna Taylor didn't resist. People like Botham Jeans didn't resist. So how could I preach the message to children to comply when these people didn't resist and they're still not with us? What do you tell your children?
Ooh.
What are those private, not to get too personal, but what are those private conversations like?
So I will tell you, I speak to my children really raw, right? I just give it to them because you have to. I'm not soft with the message because the world is not going to be soft with them. And so I'll just tell them, you know what? You can do what's perceived as everything right, and you will still end up dead. And that's just what it is. So we have those conversations, and mind you, so my oldest daughter is 13, and my middle daughter is 12. And my oldest daughter is about to be 14 soon, but they're very, very young. And so we talk about that. We talk about what the double standard is. So since they were smaller, I used to tell them, you're going to have to be, 10 times as good and this much smarter and this much faster and this. But now, you know what I've told them? You know what? You are done. First, okay, back it up. So I also talk to them about, when something hurts you, let people know and tell them this is not right, this is inappropriate, this is how I feel, and now I've decided you are done performing your pain. I'm not doing that anymore. And now I'm not performing for you to feel sorry for me because I'm a person. And if I have to do all of that to make you feel something for me, I'm not the problem. Wow. So number one. Number two, you know what? You are not going to continue to hold yourself to a standard that is unsustainable. You have people who are excellent that are dropping dead at 50 because their entire life they have worked themselves to the bone to be better in somebody else's eyes. I am no longer performing for you to see the value in me. I just am, and I get to exist and I get to be. And all of my flaws and my worth and my beauty and the negative and the positive. So now for my daughters, look, you just be. As long as you're happy, you can take care of yourself. I don't care nothing else about the rest. And you're not hurting anybody else. Wow. That's definitely an important part. So I talk to them when we talk about authority and what it looks like and how it can present itself. Especially when it's people that don't look like you or don't sympathize or empathize with your experience or who you are. You have to recognize that, and it's hard, right? Because they're kids, so they assume, well, they're adults, so they're good and they're right and they're whatever. And I tell them, guess what? As adults, we're just winging it, just like you, because there's no handbook, right? You learn things and you take that experience and you try to be a better person, but we're all trying to figure it out. And so I'll tell them if I'm doing something, even as a parent, I hold my kids to a standard, or used to, and I kind of still do too. I mean, I definitely want them to be high performers, but I used to hold them to a standard that was just unrealistic. So I guess just going back to the police thing, I just tell them, like, you know what? in the moment. I can't tell you what to do now because the moment may be different for you when you're there. I tell them it's more important to be alive than a martyr.
That's true.
But I wouldn't necessarily say just comply and just lay down because you feel dead inside after that.
Yes.
So
and that's how I felt. I felt just like, what am I teaching them?
And so that's a whole different type of death, right? So to be honest, as a black parent in today's society, there's almost no right answer. Because even when they comply, there's going to be resentment. There's going to be a different type, But then if they don't, because they're quick to shoot our babies, they'll choke them out on the curb or they'll whatever. I've seen videos of them. I think the girl might have been 13 at a pool party. The police is choke holding her, and she's all of 90 pounds. It's ridiculous. So I guess the best thing you can do is inform, just kind of let them know hey, this is the world we live in. While we're gonna do our best to make it different by the time you get to my age, there's no guarantee. This is just what we can do. I'm not gonna tell you to lay down for anybody. I'm not gonna tell you to not be you, but I'm telling you it's more important to be alive than be a martyr. But in the moment, you gotta do what's for you.
That's your experience.
And whatever you do, I'm gonna support that.
Gosh, that is very, very difficult. What do you feel like our response as a black community to, of course we can go national, when all this took place after the pandemic was in full swing and George Floyd was murdered, what do you feel like we have to start at the community level? And I remember I called you, I was in tears just because I felt like I needed to do something.
Right.
There was just I'm a black man in this society and I can't just go to sleep. I can't just brush my teeth and cut the grass like I usually do. I've got to act. And so when I decided to interview you, it was I've got to find a powerful activist, someone who's just not going to take it. But then we are also charged with the narrative of I'm an angry black man and you're just an angry black woman. I can even play the devil's advocate. I can say people like Candace Owens, who has disparaging remarks about George Floyd. What do you say to people who basically come back with the Black Lives Matter movement is a democratic construct, it's a media construct, it's not real, it's made up. What do you say to black people who have this idea?
So I tell them, number one, watch being that token for confirmation bias, because that is a problem. Especially to people like Candace Owens. So she will say there's not an issue with racism. When she was 17, her and the NAACP just brought a whole lawsuit for racial discrimination, right?
Yeah.
So either it exists or it doesn't. So either way, to me, she's a liar and she's not a credible. She's just not credible. For others, most times what I've seen in a lot of black people who kind of play that card, and maybe I wouldn't call it playing a card, but when they do that, they say, oh, this is da-da-da. So our lives mattering is not political. So people will say Black Lives Matter is a political statement. It's my life is not political. This is my life. This is not a video game. I'm not respawning. I'm not coming this is me. I was born like you were. I grew up like you did. At what point does this 3-year-old little cute little baby become a threat? You know what I'm saying? And those are the things that we just have to think about. So at what point does our life not matter the same? Or is it over time? Is it just less valuable the older you get? What does that look like? Because that's really what these are people. I don't know how to explain to people that you're supposed to care about other people. I don't know how to explain to people that you have to be empathetic, sympathetic, but honestly, more than anything, just be a human being. Sit in your humanness and just think about what it's like. Because it's frustrating more than anything. So to those people who would say, like you said, Black Lives Matter is this and that, we're not looking at the organization. We are looking at the movement, right? Because they used to be the same, but they're not anymore. They're totally different. We have a Clarksville Black Lives Matter that's completely disconnected from the national organization because it's about the statement and the sentiment and not that organization. That's just what it is. And so when we say it's democratic, again, it's not political. It's people's lives.
And it is very, very powerful to see not just black leadership, but black female leadership. Like I've said many times, as a father of women, they need to see you. They need to see themselves in that position. So, good luck to you. Hope that you could. We need you as our community to exceed and go above and beyond even what you thought that you would ever do. And I just want to thank you for your time. We're in Juanita Charles' office, so I think we had a few people working here, so I do appreciate you for coming in. And we're going to do this again. We're going to make this work. Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, 100%. Black Lives Matter always. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I want to thank Ms. Charles for her time and thank you for watching. Join us next week as we continue the season and our journey through our community in regards to Black lives. I'm Anthony White and you've been watching.